Hey guys, I asked on my Instagram what video you wanted to see, podcasting or networking, and the majority of you said networking for introverts. I'm really passionate about this. I've really struggled with this in the past. I used to be a complete wallflower, just hated being in a crowd of people, hated walking into a room where I didn't know anyone. So make sure you're following on Instagram because I do want to do more polls, as I did with this one, to make sure I'm picking the right topics that you guys really want to see. I will link my Instagram in the description box, so make sure you follow me on there. So the thing that helped me with networking was understanding more about people. To be a good networker is to have a genuine interest in people, and I know that might not come naturally to a lot of people, but I've always found, even though I'm an introvert, I'm very much interested in people. That being said, as an introvert, I do quite like to get into the nitty-gritty of people's stories. I don't really like small talk. I find it really boring and fake and annoying, and I think a lot of people feel like networking and meeting new people has to be small talk. But if we get on to my first tip, I think you'll realise that it doesn't have to be. So tip number one is ask questions. This sounds really obvious, but it's also counterintuitive to what people think networking has to be. I think people feel like if to be a good networker, you have to have the chat, you have to have the, really confident talk, you have to be able to present yourself. And yeah, I think that definitely helps. But I know that a good conversation is usually genuine interest in the other person and asking questions because of that. So the more questions you can ask when you meet someone, the more they're going to go away from that conversation feeling like you're interested in them. They'll probably be really happy to have met you. They'll feel like you give a shit. They'll feel like you care about what they're saying, which is really hard to come by. And you'll probably find naturally, as the conversation goes on, as you ask more questions, as you learn about that person, you'll find common ground anyway, and that is always a great icebreaker. If I meet someone at a blogging event, say, I might say, are you a WeBlog North member? I might then say, oh great, like I help run WeBlog North with my friend Holly. Have you met Holly before? Oh amazing, how did you meet Holly? Oh right, so you're both lifestyle bloggers in Manchester. Oh great, whereabouts do you live in Manchester? I'm always keen to know where people live in Manchester because we're house hunting. Yeah, I'm looking for a house with my partner next year. We're just looking, around different areas. How do you find it where you live? So that's me just talking to myself. So you can imagine if someone else is there, they're probably going to be reacting to what I've said. They're going to be asking me questions. It's just going to flow into a natural conversation. So tip number two, I would try to get quite clear on what you want out of the event. Have that in mind and have that be the type of person who you would want to be friends with, basically. Likewise, if you're there to make business connections, just act in accordance with your goal at the event, if that makes sense. If you're there to represent your company, just have in mind like what your company's values are, what you stand for, and having that at the forefront of your mind will hopefully help you naturally shape the conversation down that path. A current example for me is I am obsessed with podcast interviews and podcast guests. I host a weekly podcast and I am always looking for new guests. I'm always looking for cool people, amazing women to interview on the podcast. So if I meet someone and they're saying all the right things, they're like reeling me into their story and they just sound like they're doing great work, they might have a really inspiring story, they might just have something really unique about them, I'll just always have in the back of my mind, like, podcast guest, networking for the podcast. So I'll be really confident in asking them, have you been on a podcast before? do you do podcast interviews? I'd love to chat to you and, you know, hopefully get you on the podcast. My third point is going to totally contradict that. Give without expectation. I think the worst networkers are the people who will just simply like thrust a business card in your face as soon as they meet you, putting too much pressure on that event being like the one where you meet amazing people and you sign up 5 new clients. Having that expectation on yourself will A, make you feel crap because you'll probably come away, you know, you can't control that outcome because you don't know who's in the room. But also B, it's going to reflect in your mannerisms and your body language and your communication. When you're giving without expectation, you're just going to sell yourself so much more, especially in a business context. If you're just speaking passionately about the things you love and the things that you love to do in your work, that's just going to come across so much better than if you're trying to sell yourself in a way that's making the other person feel like you're just giving them a sales pitch. And my last tip, because business and networking is so similar to dating, you have to have the confidence to follow up and continue the conversation. Especially as introverts, it's so easy to meet someone really cool, to not have the confidence to say anything, and then you almost reach that point in the future where it would be too awkward to reach out again now, and you just lose contact with people. So one thing that I used to do that I would recommend to you, if you perhaps don't have the confidence to say in person, I really enjoyed this chat, I'd love to go for coffee, I'd love to ask you in for a meeting, I'd love to whatever, tweet them or DM them on Instagram, you know, exchange cards with them and follow up straight away that evening if possible, to just say, it was so great to meet you, thanks so much for the chat, keep in touch. If you followed up with that person to say, would love to keep in touch, maybe let's go for a coffee, or are you at this event next week, they're gonna know instantly that you're interested in them, that they're interested, that they're just gonna feel good about it, and you're more likely to retain a relationship if you're just upfront. So in whatever way feels comfortable for you, try and do that. I also want to add, because I'm aware that as introverts, our energy is very sacred and it can be quite draining being in a room full of people. As much as you want to meet new people, I think you have to be quite selective with your events as an introvert, and that comes, there's a big learning curve with that. You will end up going to events where you feel drained, or you didn't enjoy yourself, or you feel like you've wasted your energy. But learn from that and try to find the types of events that you like. I personally don't do more than 1 event a week. Even if I am busy with an event, I will always structure my day around it, so I have time by myself in the morning and maybe the day after. So just be really conscious of that if you can. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If you're struggling with this, let me know. If I've not covered anything that you are just worrying about, whatever it might be, just leave a comment below and we can chat. So thanks guys. Please subscribe so you don't miss any new videos in the future, and I will see you soon. Bye!